What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be going through my round 12 AFL tips and predictions. Now, just like everyone else, my tips for round 11 were absolutely terrible. It was a complete stinker after a bit of good form. A 3 out of 9, it just completely puts you back in your place. It's not great at all. Bottom 79% as well. We'll quickly go through the tips that I got wrong. I started poorly on the Friday night. This was one of those 50-50 games, and the wheel played the fate of my tip. And it went with the Blues, and of course another time. I think I've gone for the Blues now for the last 5 games, and they have only won 1 of those games. So I just need to stop tipping them. It's as simple as that. The next game I went St Kilda to beat the Hawks. It was a pretty obvious tip for myself at the time, especially as a Saints fan. But yeah, one of the worst games in recent memory I've seen from the Saints. We just don't really want to talk too much about that game again. And then the next game, the upsets just kept continuing. It was certainly a round of upsets here. Melbourne and the Dockers. I thought the Dockers would definitely challenge and make it close, and they certainly did, but didn't think they'd actually get up and win. I went the safer tip in Melbourne, didn't get that one right, unfortunately. And then in the Geelong v GWS game, I know the Giants played pretty well at GMHBA, a bit of a bogey team for the Cats over there, and I didn't think that they'd do it 3 in a row. They got it done 3 in a row, and the Cats, they're looking kind of average. Their season might be slipping away. And then the upsets continue. I went the Dogs, thought, you know, with the form that they've been in, you should get it done. No, the Suns were really good, got the job done by 7 points. I thought at that rate, yeah, just get all the tips wrong. I don't even care. I started getting a few tips right. Of course, Essendon beating West Coast. That was one that every single person should have tipped correctly. But the bad tipping continued on the Sunday to start things off. I went the Tigers. The Power got the job done by 10 to go 8 in a row. The Pies and an easy tip beat North Melbourne. And then finally, I got an actual decent tip correct. That wasn't a straightforward one. Adelaide beating Brisbane. Even if I tried, I don't even think I could get worse than that. Of course, the big calls, we'll quickly review them. I started off on the Sydney v Carlton game, predicting that there'd be non-normal lead changes. We got 3 early in the game, and then it was just Sydney that dominated the rest of the game. I've had a bit of faith the Saints would put on a pretty big score to record their highest score of the season, which was like around 113. It was certainly not the case, with only scoring 78, a poor outing for the Saints in terms of the scoring. The next one I got correct though, Melbourne v Fremantle. I said that the Dockers would be leading for longer than the D's during the game, and I got that one correct. It was a bit close, 60 minutes to 50. And Geelong v GWS, again with the leads. I said that the Cats would be up for 90+% of the game, and it was pretty much the other way around, to be honest with you. The Giants were actually in front for just about 90% of the game. It was completely remarkable. Gold Coast v Western Bulldogs, this was a pretty poor one. I said that Artie Jones, I thought he'd step up and kick 3 or more. Goals, he kicked 0. He had donuts. Artie Jones, he had a poor outing. And then in West Coast v Essendon, I said there'd be 12 or more individual Essendon goal scorers. And I was a little bit close. However, the Bombers only recorded 9 individual goal scorers. The Sunday games in Richmond put Adelaide, I said that the Tigers would score 5 more goals than behind. A terrible one given how inaccurate it was. They scored instead 4 more behinds in goals. And with myself netting 2 more correct and netting the next 2 correct, I couldn't get it done. I said that North would be up at any break in the Collingwood v North game. Didn't get that one right. And then in Adelaide v Brisbane, I think I said, yeah, Adelaide to kick 6 or more goals in any quarter. It wasn't the worst big call in the world, but the most goals they recorded in any quarter were 4 in the second and last. For the 3rd time in a row, I have to do a punishment. And for the 3rd time in a row, it was Geordie Pluto with the most likes. So this one obviously won't happen, you know, right now. But it was to go to Woolworths and keep putting random products in the store into the free fruit for kids basket till you get caught. That's actually kind of funny. However, there is one punishment that I'll get done now. And it was one that was requested ages ago in round 2. And that was to write a 3-page letter to Gillon McLaughlin explaining why there should be a USA team before a Tassie team. So yeah, it'll be an absolute waste of my time, but you know, need to get some of them done, so I might as well get that one done. Hey Gillon, I write this letter to inform of you first game to be played between the AK-47s and the Carlton Blues. Alrighty, let's now get through to my round 12 tips. A bit of a shorter one it should be, because there are just the 7 games, a couple of teams or few teams have the bye this week, which means it'll be a slightly shorter video, a little bit less to cover. We start things off on the Friday night between Melbourne and Carlton. A very intriguing matchup this one certainly is. The D's of the back of 2 losses in a row, and obviously Carlton, we all know the form that they've been in, 4 losses in a row. I think 6 of the last 7 losses, something like that. They've just been in absolutely horror form, and it doesn't look like anything is changing anytime soon with the Blues. You thought if there was any game that the Blues really needed to win was the one against the Swans, and it was a game where I thought they should have taken their chances a bit more, especially in the first half when they seemed to be the more dominant side, but then Sydney slowly got the game onto their terms, and Carlton, they just weren't able to execute. It was as simple as that, and it was just another really average outing, and then just an average football club. It's just a side that I just have no faith in. As opposed to the Demons, they were also a little bit disappointing on the weekend, but you can sort of excuse their performance a little bit more than the Blues' performance. The Dockers are just finding their form now. I can't really say too much out of this game because I didn't get to watch it, but yeah, it seemed like the Dockers were just too good of a side. And I think the game in a way was similar to the loss to the Power. You know, they were in the contest, but possibly deserved to be down by a bit more. Never really looked like being a genuine threat in that game, and they certainly have not been at their best, and they haven't been for a while, the D. So I think this is a game where the D should win. They'll be licking their lips in a way that they've got the Blues who are in some poor form, and they're lucky to be in the 4 with 2 losses to St Kilda and the Dogs also. I can't really give Carlton too much faith at the moment because every time I keep backing them in, they're doing terribly. There's no reason for me to back them in. Melbourne should be too good. They're the better side, and they'll win it by, I'm going 22 points on the Friday night. Next up on the Saturday, we've got Port Adelaide taking on Hawthorn at the Adelaide Oval. The Power are absolutely flying at the moment with 8 wins on the trot, and if they win this game, it'll be their longest ever winning streak in their history. So a bit of a milestone there, and they really should. Although we can't really take a side like the Hawks too lightly now, as they have actually been really impressive in their last 2 weeks. Obviously, against West Coast, 116 points. A lot of people thought, it was against West Coast, and Kilda really should put a number of them or bring them back down to reality. And it just wasn't the case. They played so much better with so much heart, so much more heart. And honestly, with all their youngsters on their list, they're going to be a pretty decent side in 2 or 3 years with so many players on their list still yet to fulfill their potential. But they just, were completely over the Saints from the get-go, really. It was a game where they should have been up by more, couldn't take their chances. I thought St Kilda might get that win, but an undeserved win. But Hawthorn, they just found a way to come back in that last quarter down by 20, and it was a famous win led by their captain, James Sicily. It's probably one of their best individual performances I've seen in a while. 43 touches, 16 marks as well. So, Hawthorn, a lot to be excited about at the moment. They might not be finishing last, but I don't think they really care at the moment. Obviously, Port, as I said before, 8 wins on the trot. A good, gritty win against the Tigers. Umpiring might not have been, the best, but at the same time, they certainly had a lot of chances to put the game away a bit earlier. With, I think, 17 behind. So, a good performance. You probably let them off for, letting a game slip here and there, but no, they've been really good. And they should win this one again, because they're not St Kilda. They're not going to drop one against the Hawks at the Adelaide Oval. But I think with Hawthorn's form that they've been in as of late, they'll carry it on to this week and they'll put up a good fight. But Port Adelaide should be the side that's way too strong. And I'll have them win the game by 27 points with a big call. Joe Midfin-Layton scores 5 more goals. Next up at Optus Stadium on the 4:35 p.m. time slot, we've got the Eagles taking on the Pies. And now, I'll tell you what, it's probably the easiest game to tip of the season when you think about it, regardless of it being at Optus. The $13 odds the Eagles have. The Pies currently top of the ladder. The Eagles currently bottom of the ladder. And they couldn't be in any polar opposite positions at the moment. Like, really. Obviously, again, West Coast, the same story applies. They just can't get anything going. If it wasn't for Oscar Allen, I really don't know where the Eagles would be. I think at the moment, Allen is like top 5 in the goal scorers in the Coleman, which is remarkable given how poor the Eagles have been and how difficult they've been able to, get chances in front of goal and score. And I don't think Essendon were that good. I thought that, to be honest with you, it was a better performance in West Coast, and the commentators were actually commending the Eagles for their efforts, whilst they still lost by 50. That just goes to show where they're at. And obviously, Collingwood, as expected, got the win against North. They were tested for times in the game, I felt, especially that last quarter where North, I think, kicked 6-7 goals, kicked more of a score they scored in the first 3 quarters. So a bit of a disappointing way to finish that game for Collingwood, but at the end of the day, they're just banking those wins in and they're looking like premiership favourites 100%. This is an undeniable tip. If you tip West Coast, you're completely a lunatic or you've lost a punishment or something like that. I cannot see a day in hell where Collingwood drop this. Collingwood will win this game, and I'm going to go a 65-point win. And my big call, the Pies get 65 or more inside 50s during the game. We head down to Marvel Stadium for a really, really intriguing contest between the Dogs and the Cats. This could be eyeing as one of the games of the round, and I could be going to this one. I'm not sure yet. Well, the Dogs on the weekend, will they possibly drop the game that could cost them a top 4 spot come the end of the season if that does come back to haunt them? They definitely weren't that great, though, the Dogs. They started off hot, but then the Suns certainly were the more dominant side. And, the Dogs just couldn't really get things going, particularly in the forward line. To drop that game by 7 points is a bit disappointing, given it was an opportunity for them to go 8-3 and sneak into the top 4. And the Cats, another really bad dropped opportunity. I don't know how they're still $8.50 to win the flag. They're a real chance for missing out on finals, because that was one of their really winnable games they should have just buried. The Giants, I mean, now they've got a fairly difficult next few. They could say a start of 5-7, even 5-8. So it's going to be a difficult game to predict when you think about it. But form-wise, the Dogs, and at Marvel, they go pretty well at Marvel. That's their home base. And the Cats, it's a mixed bag for the Cats. We really don't know what they're going to provide, but their injuries are still a bit of a worry. The Dogs are going to dominate in the midfield, you would think, and that should win in the game when you think about it. And I think the Dogs currently are a slightly better side. So the Dogs, for mine, will win the game as my tip by 14 points with my big call. 55 or less combined points are scored in any half. Next up, we have a game at TIO Stadium. That's the second week in a row with the Suns. They just love to play in Darwin, it seems. The Suns take on the Crows, and this is a difficult one to predict as well. A really difficult one, actually. This could also be a game. Like, two really good Saturday clashes. The Suns on the weekend recorded a very, very good win, a very gritty win to just keep their season slightly alive. The door is open by just a little bit, because they lose that 4-7 at the midway point of the season. It might make things pretty difficult. But now they're 5-6, and they've got a couple of winnable games. This one against the Crows, certainly they can catch the Crows lacking, because we all know the Crows. They're an awesome side at home, with that win against Brisbane, and we'll talk a little bit more on that a little bit later. But away from home, they've been a struggling side, and the Suns at home are in their territory with their conditions that suit them, play pretty well. They're normally a very tough and competitive side to play against. And Adelaide, again, as I said before, they got a really good win against the Lions at home. I just expected them to bring out the heat, which they did for 4 quarters. Their forward line was super efficient, super dangerous, and they just were able to pile on enough of a score to break through the lines. And that last quarter especially, where I think they kicked 4 in a row to win that game, ice it. Yeah, really impressive from the Crows. They look like a really, really good side at home. But because this is an away game, and I'm not sure how they fare at TIO Stadium, the Suns played there last week. They'll be more adjusted to the conditions. I don't know if you call it an upset. More people are tipping the Crows, and that's fair enough. But because it's at TIO Stadium, I see the Suns getting up in this one in a thriller by 4 points. With my big call, the Suns come back from 20 or more points down at any stage of the game. We head now to the 2 Sunday games, and we've got 2 because we've got 4 sides with the byes. The Giants take on the Tigers at Giants Stadium to kick things off, and this is another intriguing matchup. Another difficult game to predict. I tell you what, the last few have been quite tough. The Giants coming off the back of a really, really memorable victory, one of their best in recent memory against the Cats, where everything was against them really, and they played awesome. They could have won that game by more with all the opportunities they got. Toby Green kicked 4 first half goals in his 200th. Lockie Whitfield has a really good game. The Giants, they're a side that, I've said it a lot of times, but they're not easy to play against. They really have poor performances, and didn't think they'd come and bring the heat, but that well to actually get the result at GMHBA. And Richmond, it was just another game where they were almost, they're now in the bottom 4, but their percentage is 98.4. So a lot of the results that haven't gone their way could have easily just gone their way. And I'm not sure what the reason behind that is, because especially during the Dynasty era, I thought they were a pretty good side in the close ones. But that's another game by under 12 points that they've dropped. Umpiring was questionable in that last quarter. Match fixing, as Studi might say. But at the end of the day, they didn't pick up the result, and they're sitting bottom 4. I think, though, the Tigers match up decently well against the Giants. This will be a close game, I reckon. 100%. But I'm going a little bit of an upset here. More people going the Giants, and fair enough. They're in some decent form. The Tigers, they're due a win. I think they'll get the win. First win under Andrew McQualter. In a really good, tight, close game, we're going to go the Tigers by 9. With my big call, Tim Taranto has 35 or more touches. Now, the last game we've got on the Sunday, the graveyard shift. A bit of a stalemate, to be honest with you. The Bombers take on North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. The Bombers recorded a decent 50-point win against the Eagles, and that's why I just say decent, because any other 50-point win would have been a lot more impressive, but it was against the West Coast side, and I didn't see a lot in that game that really impressed me too much from the Bombers, but they got the win. A few Bombers fans, though, on Instagram weren't happy with the 50-point win. And North Melbourne, I'm really not sure how North fans would have taken that game against the Pies, because, to be honest with you, they probably would have taken a 35-point loss. But then again, it's probably another question of why do North finally start playing some decent footy when the game's already lost? Like, that last quarter was really impressive, but they could have started, they could have used those goals in the first quarter, first half, and the game mattered. The game was over in the first quarter, really, and that's what cost them the game. But I think they've shown a bit more competitiveness in the last 2 weeks. For some reason, maybe Clyco not coaching is the reason. But I think like in the Sydney game and for a lot of the Collingwood game, they're going to bring it up to the Bombers. But the Bombers, it should be a game that the Bombers don't drop, in my opinion. And this could propel them, to 6th position, possibly, if results go their way. I think the Bombers win the game by 30 points. My big call, North Melbourne win any half of football. Alrighty, guys. Well, those are my round 12 tips and predictions. Certainly an interesting round of footy with a few close games that are going to be difficult to predict. Hopefully, I can get a score of around 5 or 6 or 7. We'll see what happens, though. For my tips, though, I went the D's by 22. I went the Power, the Pies, the Dogs. The Suns in a little bit of an upset, and the Tigers also in a little bit of an upset, and then the Bombers for my round of 12 tips and predictions. Now, I want to address something real quick. My tipping competition after the end of round 12, the leader is going to win a prize, but I'm not going to reveal it until the next video. So we'll see who's on top currently. We'll see who's on top of round 11. Wow, I certainly didn't expect many people to be tipping high scores, but a 7 with a margin of 1 is pretty damn impressive for this round that we got. I'm not going to lie. Universal, well done. Lockie, Pendlebury Scott, Liam, and a few others also with 7. But can he really be too commendable? Like, at the end of the day, they would have been pretty silly to be tipping sides like the Hawks and the Giants anyway. They were just lucky it paid off. Kev's Magpies. Wow. Kev's Magpies on top after round 11. He only needs one more round to go before he gets himself a prize, possibly. He's got 73. Longy with 72. Zacko Footy, Jack Biddle, Lincoln Walk, and Pasindu. And then we've got quite a few on 71 as well. So that was a pretty difficult round. If you got like a score of 3 like I did, that would have put you down a few places, as I'm sitting currently 432nd. Anyways, those are my round 12 tips and predictions. We got all the links to the comps and all that in the description. Hopefully you enjoyed that Gillan McLaughlin letter punishment. There'll be more coming your way with the punishments. And the Goal King Challenge will be out on the Thursday. Currently editing the video, currently going on very nicely. So I can't wait for you guys to go and check that out. We'll see you soon in that video. Until then, have a good one and subscribe.